Haydn Jones, Mary Miller, and Grizelda Hervey in A Crown for the Strong, a new play for radio by Lydia Ragosin. The play opened in the Palace of Westminster early in September 1485.
No very great of claims.
They're a surly lot, these Londoners.
Impassive, Uncle Jasper, impassive at the rotation of kings.
The sound of Bosworth Field and split their ears. Too far away. I'd knock their heads together. Sheriff, Lord Mayor and all. Tell them that the ringing was bells for Henry Tudor's victory at Bosworth.
Oxford talks as if he wanted me to treat my subject Londoners like a conquered race. A soldier's aggressiveness doesn't win friends, my lord.
No, but it often helps to win causes, Harry.
I need no reminding, Uncle, of Oxford's services to mine.
The man pledged to the House of Lancaster pledges himself to see a duty well done, that's all.
You'll see the crown put safely on my head, Oxford, and not so very long to wait for it now.
Westminster's a maze, William. You're not going to go down one decade and you'll go up another.
Lord Stanley, and my brave Sir William, we thought you'd lost your way.
Memory serves me in the end, sir.
Of course, both of you have been very familiar with the palace. The king in residence may change, but the privies remain in the same place.
It's been a long time, sir, since there was a rightful king in residence at Westminster.
And do you think these stones could be less indifferent than the citizens of London?
They'll come to their senses.
And what will they sensibly decide?
That the Yorkists were beaten at Bosworth, and all support for them smashed face down in the mud like Richard himself. They'll turn out to cheer when they're sure of that.
It takes a little time for the population to realize these things, Harry. A change of power to them
is likely to mean an interruption of trade. Oh, God forbid that, Uncle. If the greater part of the wealth of my new realm stems from London, I'd much rather our rich merchant citizens sat tight in their counting houses, increasing it, than line the streets wastefully cheering me and leaving the profits to take care of themselves. Profits seldom do that.
They'll cheer their rightful king when he comes out of the abbey with the confessor's crown on his head. They'll know the facts by then.
And what are the facts, Sir William Stanley? That after some hesitation, you led a charge of cavalry at Bosworth. This was at such a crucial moment that if you'd delayed a quarter of a minute longer, Richard himself would have reached me. A desperate man, ironclad, with a battle-axe in his hand. He'd have reached me. And I've never pretended to be the soldier he was. He'd still be king, Sir William, if you hadn't made up your mind he shouldn't be at the moment when you did. These are the facts for our people to consider, are they?
There was no hesitation on my part, Your Grace.
Then your intervention had a godlike precision.
My brother and I, sire, were at the field of Bosworth with one purpose alone. To destroy Richard Plantagenet the usurper, and make sure Henry of Lancaster got the crown he's entitled to. Even if it did come out of a thorn bush.
And who do you think would say I was the usurper, Lord Stanley?
I wouldn't. And I've risked a thing or two apart from my head to confirm that.
But suppose I were to admit it for myself, that I hold the throne of England by right of conquest alone?
No,
I wish you'd think, gentlemen. Is there really any stronger title to a crown than the title of conqueror? The actuality of conquest alone?
Well, this is England. We've not been conquered for a long time.
English kings have been conquered privately several times since William of Normandy.
That's because they'd no right to be what they were, like Richard Plantagenet and his brother Edward.
Have I as much right to be what I am now? Well, of course I have. I've taken the right. Not by succession, no. I was offered it by the sword. By your sword, Oxford, and yours, Lord Stanley and Sir William. That's a tremendous right, isn't it? Well, don't be embarrassed, my lords. I intend to justify it. I intend to hold my throne so tight that my legitimate heirs will inherit. Could I make you a more comforting promise?
You are the legitimate heir yourself, my lord.
The sword legitimizes. Always, Sir William. Now, who's going to challenge that?
Richard may. He's dead, only because he's dead. The dead have a power the living sometimes envy.
Did you know I was aware of that, Uncle? And shall I tell you when? Directly after Bosworth. I saw his body myself, stripped naked, hacked, and angry with blood slung across a horse. And that is the way heroes die. Mocked, reviled, tossed into a muddy, unknown grave. Heroes die like that. The word gets round. They desecrated him. Caesar has a splendid funeral, but no one is sure where the martyrs lie.
Richard was a Yorkist usurper.
Richard was the enemy of my house and may still have to be reckoned with.
We can count on the North to be loyal to him still. I fear so. So Richard must be discredited. Lord Stanley has the right word.
Discredited?
Any repute he had, destroyed. Because there are Yorkists, just as there are still heathens. Turks, Yorkists, and Jews.
Are we saying there are men who love Richard enough to carry their devotion beyond his death?
Yes, and common people among them. All sorts of common folk.
So it's to disenchant the common folk, is it, that we must try to give Richard Plantagenet a deadly reputation?
As a politic strategy, Parry, it seems to be necessary and wise.
What do we accuse him of?
Murder, to start with. Murder upon murder.
Whose?
His own brother Clarence, for one. Lord Hastings, the Duke of Buckingham.
It's understood that Richard was known to have begged King Edward for Clarence's life. As for Hastings, if I'd been in Richard's place and he'd connived treason against me, I'd have had his head just as promptly. And the Duke of Buckingham, of course, led a rebellion against this king, so we still have to invent a murder. But don't suppose, gentlemen, that I'm not very much in favor of the idea that my predecessor should be shown up as a devil and a monster. The use of calumny is infinitely preferable to the use of arms. We must think carefully and name some crimes against him.
Infanticide, for instance.
What was that, Sir William?
Prince Edward and Richard, Duke of York, his own nephews, murdered in the Tower. Surely, sire, if that were Richard's only crime, it's enough to prove him the very devil of a monster.
So it would, but where's the proof that the princes are really dead?
Proof? But it's known for sure they can't still be alive.
They never left the Tower alive. It's been said for a long time.
Rumored that the princes were dead and Richard had them murdered. Only rumored, and not too broadly either.
The Tower holds the proof. Investigation will reveal it. Possibly interrogation as well.
I agree with you, Uncle. The Tower holds what we could use as proof that Richard murdered his nephews. So I promise you this. The day the remains of those unfortunate boys are disinterred, I shall hang them on Richard's reputation like the stinking corpse of a dog round a criminal's neck. But to do that, you'll agree, gentlemen, we must have the remains to begin with.
Is it possible, sire, that you doubt they're dead yourself?
No, Oxford. I'm very sure they're dead.
Then could you doubt who killed them?
I know who killed them.
It was Richard.
It was certainly the man who had the most to gain by their deaths.
Just as it's been said all the time, Richard.
By God, it only needs to prove his guilt for that, and you'll destroy all sympathy for any future Yorkist conspiracy in his name.
That's my very earnest wish, Sir William. We must have peace in England. No more conspiracies, no more armies treading blood through the land. Peace. Trade. Prosperity. Have you noticed that for great days of high importance, one often remembers what the weather was like? Maybe we shall remember that it was a fine day when I came to London.
Yes, a glorious day when the white rose withered.
There are white roses in the garden down there.
We'll plant red ones instead. But you can't altogether get rid of the white ones.
Not when they stand for a sworn oath. Is that what you mean, Lord Stanley?
Well, if it pleases your grace to refer to that at this moment.
It doesn't particularly please me, but I should think it pleases those of you who undertook my cause that I happen to remember it. What do you say, Sir William? Would you have charged to my rescue on Bosworth Field with such a free conscience if you hadn't known I'd made it?
Maybe it is not so much what I'd have done at Bosworth, sire, as what other men did not do because of that oath you took.
You mean the Yorkists who didn't intervene to save Richard? The honourable Yorkist barons who sat at home when Richard came to meet me and gave me my victory as a gift of their absence. You think they only did it because I'd promised to marry Princess Elizabeth when I'd taken the crown?
That kind of bargain has its place in negotiations for a throne, Harry.
Perhaps, but it's not important to me.
Would you revoke your promise, sir?
Oh, no, my lord. The promise is too trivial to be worth the uproar if I did.
Trivial? A man pledges himself to marry a woman he's never met in his life, and he calls it trivial.
I've a natural hope, dear Oxford, that the daughter of Edward IV will at least please me, even if I don't happen to please her. But I tell you this. If it's important to the Yorkist lords who supported my cause that a princess of York should be my consort, then let them have their satisfaction for what it's worth to them. I'll marry her, because I set very little importance on who my queen shall be, providing she's capable of producing my heirs. Since she's not going to rule England through me, no one else shall do it through her. Therefore, I wish her healthy rather than wise.
I hope you're ready to show her a little heart, Harry. Remember, this is a young princess who's had no more choice than you have.
Oh, I shall try to sympathize with her for that, Uncle.
Can a meeting take place soon?
You want to hurry me, Sir William?
I think it would please and reassure those who committed themselves in your favor, sire.
I have a great many important things to take care of, including my own coronation. But you think an early meeting with my future bride is one of them, do you?
I do, sire.
And I think it's more important that I should meet her mother first.
The Queen Dowager. Yes, that conniving Woodville woman. It'd be an advantage to make sure whether she's still on our side.
And if so, why? And what she hopes to get from it. And what would you think? There you have a woman who was Queen of England, who ruled England through her doting, dissolute fool of a husband, Edward. Richard was her deadliest enemy, and he became king. She hated him. Off she went to take sanctuary in Westminster, her children huddled under her wing, and yet shortly after Richard had usurped the crown, there she was, on the best of terms with him. Now she turns again. Either her ambitiousness makes her the most dangerous woman in England, or the most foolish. Yes, I think it most important at this point that I should get acquainted with all the hazards I may have to face in accepting the crown of England.
Henry Tudor, I've heard so much about you.
From your son, the Marquis of Dorset, I assume, madam? He gave a good account of me, did he, for the short time he was my ally during my exile in France?
Oh, God, can you understand the danger I suffered while that fiend Richard was king? Can you even imagine the compromises I was forced to make?
Oh, very great ones, it seems to me.
I was helpless in the hands of my enemy. I waited for you to come, like a prisoner in darkness waiting for a savior.
Mere compromises, is that what they were, madam?
What is it you want me to explain?
I'll try to make it clear. When your enemy Richard took the crown, you fled to sanctuary in Westminster Abbey with your children.
Well, of course. When your supreme enemy takes complete power, what can you do but turn to God for protection?
And while he was safe in Westminster, you promised me that I should have your eldest daughter, Elizabeth, in marriage when I deposed Richard.
I remember that promise, and how gladly I made it.
And yet, madam, quite shortly afterwards, you suddenly accepted Richard's offers of protection and surrendered your daughter into his care.
No more suddenly than I'd lost hope of your success. Surely you can understand my despair.
After the Duke of Buckingham's rebellion had failed?
And your expected landing in England came to nothing.
It took merely that to make you forsake all hope.
God help me. I was a prisoner. All I heard was what Richard allowed me to hear, news of failure and despair.
Very well. Accepting your disappointment when you knew my arrival was to be postponed, the fact still remains that you surrendered your daughter to Richard at a moment when you must have known that he was responsible for the deaths of your two young sons, Edward and Richard of York. The alternative, madam, was merely to remain at Westminster and keep your daughter there with you, or was it not?
For a lifetime?
Unless there was another possibility, a more profitable one. It's been said that Richard thought of marrying your daughter himself.
His own niece? Monstrous! Horrible!
Oh, abominable, the kind of thing we expect to hear of Richard, isn't it? And supposing it was true, would it have been entirely to your disadvantage, I wonder?
Sir, do you suggest...
Rather than spend a lifetime virtuously in refuge at Westminster, was it altogether dreadful for you to contemplate an alliance between your daughter and the King of England, which would have put you once again in the sort of position, madam, which one hears it in your character to enjoy?
Do you mean, would I willingly have sacrificed my daughter to an incestuous marriage?
Willingly. That's what I mean.
Oh, God have mercy. When I think how all my hope of deliverance lay in you, in Henry of Lancaster.
All else failing.
For so long I hoped and prayed that you'd come. And now you've come. The bright sun of liberation. And I can see nothing in your eyes but suspicion, hear nothing in your voice but accusation.
Madam, you don't know me. I'd like to present myself as an extremely cautious man, and therefore a suspicious one. Will you remember what I say? I owe my success to caution and suspiciousness. I don't know you, but I've heard a great deal about you, apart from your reputation for beauty and charm. That proves itself to me when I look at you. But your other reputation, madam, also goes before you.
How strong must a woman be to protect herself from calumny?
Your family name is Woodville. One spells it with an A for ambition, I believe.
I don't understand you.
Well, I'm most anxious that this first meeting should establish a perfect understanding.
Then wider to understand how much your friendship counts for me.
As your future son-in-law, I'm sure it does.
Do you think that as a mother, I have a more vital interest in you than that?
It's always possible, madam, that you see yourself, first of all, as mother to the future Queen of England, because that's what you are. And it may be that you see me as a simple Welsh adventurer who's got the throne of England by a twist of fortune. I wonder if you do. Because if you do, it may be that you can see your chance of ruling England again.
Again?
Through me, as you ruled once before through another king, your own husband, Edward.
Indeed.
If that's your idea, madam, I should assure you that I'm no idiot,
Sir.
and no dissolute idiot either, which is even more important, to prefer the counsel of a beautiful and clever woman to my own good judgment and purpose.
Do you want me as an enemy?
Not a dangerous one. That's why I've made certain things plain to you.
And I'll make certain things plain to you.
Oh, I'd welcome that.
You spoke of Richard being responsible for the deaths of my sons.
Well?
You think I don't know? Do you think I don't know?
What do you know?
That it wasn't Richard. It was Buckingham, and he did it for you.
What did he do for me?
Murdered my two boys. For your sake, Henry Tudor. For your sake, your sake, your sake.
But why do you believe a thing like that?
Why do you think I accepted Richard's offer of protection while I was in Westminster? Why do you think I gave Elizabeth into his care and my other daughter? You think I have done it? Have I been certain that he'd murdered my sons himself? Do you?
What makes you think it was Buckingham?
Must I give you an account of what you already know yourself?
Did you have more than Richard's word for it?
Of course I had more than his word. The evidence of the men who had care of my sons, that the Duke of Buckingham saw them last, and no one else after that. That he had supper with my children. They went to bed more than usually drowsy, and in the morning they were found dead of a slow poison.
In your place, I might have suspected that Buckingham was doing Richard's work.
Would he do that for Richard? And then declare himself for your cause, almost immediately afterwards? No, he did it for your advantage alone. I saw it at once. He murdered my sons to remove the last legal heirs of York, because if they'd been alive now, it would have taken more than Richard's death, more than your promise to marry Elizabeth, to give you any support or title to the crown. And you'll know it.
Supposing it was Buckingham who murdered those unfortunate children, would he defend you in any way if the crime were attributed to Richard anyhow?
Is that what you want?
He was your enemy. He did his best to ruin you and your family. To have such a dreadful crime attributed to him would do his reputation no good.
And if you published the truth, that it was Buckingham, some of the blame would seem to be yours, wouldn't it?
Don't you think it might be more to your advantage, madam, if you helped to protect the reputation of your future son-in-law?
How do you want me to help?
Tell me where your sons are buried.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Richard refused to show me the place. He swore they'd been given a Christian burial, that's all. But he wouldn't tell me where they lay.
But you were their mother. How could he deny you?
I think because he was afraid that I might someday put the information into the hands of his enemies.
To what advantage could they use it?
The men who saw those children dead are scattered, or dead at Bosworth themselves. There's not a single witness, is there, to swear he saw them buried. No proof to give the world that the heirs of Edward IV are really dead. So any enemy of Richard's might find very little profit now in crying murder and attributing the crime to him. Am I right, sir?
There are plenty of men ready to accept that the princes can't be alive.
And accept that Richard was the monster who slaughtered them. Try your subjects in the north with that, sir, and see if they'll be ready to believe such a calumny against him. Richard had a great power of winning men's devotion. The devil gave it to him, of course. And now, even though he's dead, he leaves a force behind him that may shake the ground beneath your throne, Henry Tudor.
Perhaps I'm aware of that.
I fancy you are.
I'm also confident that I shall deal with Richard's ghost as effectively as his body was dealt with at Bosworth.
Yes, you speak with great confidence, Henry Tudor. The confidence of a newcomer on the battlefield.
At least you can't be indifferent to my success.
My circumstances don't allow me that, do they? But yours make it quite easy for you to be indifferent to my friendship.
There's something I must tell you.
What is it?
I never required the death of Edward's heirs as a condition of claiming the throne. I ask you to believe that. and to believe in my pity for them and my regret.
You merely ask me to believe it.
I didn't come here to argue my claim to the throne against the heirs of York. I came to take it by force in the name of Lancaster.
Then Buckingham did you no service at all by making sure there'd be no Yorkist heirs left alive to inspire a Yorkist insurrection when you did come.
But there is a Yorkist heir alive at this moment. Young Warwick, the son of your husband's brother Clarence, and next in succession after your own children.
Yes, there's Warwick. And what will you do with him?
If I'd had any reason for agreeing to the murder of your sons, I'd have the same reason for doing away with Warwick now, isn't that plain? But you'll see Warwick live as safely in the tower as the two princes would have done had I found them still alive there.
You'll hear voices advising you to kill him?
I shall reproach such advice for being barbaric and unnecessary.
Yes, you may still find it possible to have Richard accused of killing my sons. They were in his care when they died. But if Warwick died suddenly while you were in your hands, oh, then the guilt would even seem to belong where in fact it lay.
Just now, madam, you were prepared to flatter me, despite your conviction that I was the man responsible for the death of your sons. You were prepared to flatter me because you saw your own profit in my pleasure. If I doubted anything I'd heard about your character before we met, I don't doubt it now.
Oh, how familiar the ordeal of humiliation has become for me since my husband died. Everything I possessed by right as lawful Queen of England taken away from me by the usurpers. Even my children. I have no one to protect my dignity. No defense against being used as any tyrant chooses to use me. And now, because I don't defy you and treat you with contempt for being what you said you were, a cunning Welsh adventurer and not a simple one, because I didn't spit at you and say I'd rather see you hanged than married to my daughter, a true princess of England, because I came into your presence with courtesies instead of insults, you accuse me of deceit and flattery. Even though you know how aware I am that you could make me beg your favor to keep the clothes on my back and have a roof to sleep under.
Madam, I promise you'll never have to beg my favor for any right owing to your dignity as Queen Dowager, so don't let your tears be for that. And I'm sad to have insulted you as a woman in adversity. But I have to remember the power you once held and what you did with it, and that those whose interests you served then may have high hopes of your fortune as mother to the Queen now. I don't wish you to be encouraged to think so, because I intend to rule this kingdom without the assistance of either my own relatives or yours.
Rule it, Henry Tudor. Rule it while you can. And for how long will that be, I wonder?
Only God can decide, of course. But my part is to make certain that the next sovereign of England will be a Tudor. And I tell you, I'm not afraid to set my living will and purpose against any force Richard Plantagenet can still invoke from the bottom of his unsuccessful grave.
Since my daughter and I are bound to share your fortune, I can only pray that anything you lose won't be Richard's gain, at least.
You make him sound too much alive. I never saw his face till he was dead. Strangely, there's nothing in a dead face one can hate. I merely saw myself as his ruin in the contest between men who aspire to thrones. I was his ruin, and I still am. If that's how the contest must be played, I'll play it just so, to the utter ruination of the loser, even when he's lost his life and only has his name left.
You're an astute man, Henry Tudor. If so, it's possible that you'll reign longer than a merely ambitious one.
Tell your daughter, madam, tell her she won't be queen for a shorter time than her mother was. And tell her, if you please, that I shall be glad to have her wait on me at midday tomorrow.
Well, my dear Lord Pembroke, this is a moment of great satisfaction to me, I can tell you.
I've seen you look round as if you'd built the Palace of Westminster with your own hands, my Lord Bishop.
It's the thought of coming back here after so long, and knowing the king about to receive me is Henry of Lancaster at last.
I think I know how you feel. Like the architect of all you survey. And it's true. You are the architect of Henry's success. And you won't find he's forgotten that while you were traveling here from France.
My Lord Bishop! Morton, you've come. Now there isn't a breach in my steel fortress of good counsel and advice.
God bless and save your majesty.
Oh, your majesty, huh? Do you hear that, Uncle? In such a few short weeks since I was entitled to be called majesty that hardly anyone's used it yet.
Perhaps it comes more easily to me, sire, because I've thought of Henry of Lancaster's King of England for so long.
And worked for my cause with devotion and wisdom ever since you thought of it. I shan't forget the honor I owe your grace for that.
I came here to give your majesty service. It's not yet time to put our sentiments before our problems.
And I need your advice at once, of course.
Ever since I left France, sire, I've been rehearsing certain recommendations I perceived it would be necessary to make to you.
My immediate future is full of the necessity for taking urgent measures of one sort and another.
Perhaps the most urgent is the one you must use to establish your legal claim to the throne.
I was thinking about that and how I'd leave it until you came to advise me.
My conclusion is that when you recall Parliament, you should repeal the act acknowledging Richard III as rightful King of England. Repeal it unread, mind you, and have it deleted from the statute book and all the copies destroyed.
I'll come back to that advice in a moment.
My next conclusion is that you should attaint Richard and all his adherents of treason. You do this by dating the commencement of your reign from the day before Bosworth, to make it follow that when Richard met you in arms, he was nothing but a rebel leading an insurrection.
Oh, that's a masterly conniver.
Connivance? It is the only way, sire, to restore tortured justice to its proper place.
Morton, I accept all the counsel you offer me from your most discerning and politic mind. But in a few minutes, I'm to meet my future bride, Elizabeth of York, for the first time. And I've come at the very moment when I'm trying to think what I shall say to her.
Won't you say what's going to make her pleased to be your wife? Because you'll spend more time with her where it's important to make that count than you will talking politics with her.
I think, Uncle, that His Grace the Bishop of Ely understands better than you do that there is no place where a king isn't wise to consider his policies as much as anything else.
His Majesty is right, and there are calculations to be made concerning this meeting with the princess. For instance, if she could be encouraged to admit that her Uncle Richard intended to marry her.
Add incest to the attainders of treason and murder.
And that he even got rid of his wife with this damnable intention. Get the princess to say so, and then make it public.
Richard's name won't sound so honourable to those who still honour it in the north.
Induce Elizabeth of York to drive a dagger at her uncle's reputation, and the effect could be as precious to your majesty as swords and lances against the Yorkist enemies who still threaten your crown.
Your Grace, the Princess Elizabeth is here.
Is she alone, Sir William?
No, the Queen Dowager is with her.
Is she indeed? I'll deal with it. Come along, Morton. We'll give my bride a welcome. Then I hope you'll find plenty to discuss with the mother, while I acquaint myself with the daughter. I thought you might like to walk in the garden. Now your mother can peer at us from the window, but she can't hear what we're talking about. Do you think she was anxious to hear what we'd say?
I never talk very much when my mother's in the room.
She usually speaks for you, is that it?
I'm afraid she has a good deal more wit than I have.
Are you good friends with your mother?
Oh, yes. I've never disobeyed her.
Out of love or fear?
What do you mean, sire?
Oh, don't let it trouble you. Now let me look at you. Oh, yes. At least one can see your father was a handsome man, and your mother a beautiful woman.
Please, I don't want to be flattered.
Oh, why not? It's honestly meant.
Is it?
I'm not obliged to court your favor. But if we're to be married, it seems to me we should start on amiable terms.
I know we're to be married, and my mother has told me why it has to be, but I can't make my heart say that it isn't wrong and evil.
What's this?
It's wrong. It's wrong.
Tell me why.
I know you didn't murder them yourself, but they were my brothers, and you must have agreed.
Elizabeth, look at me. Is that the only reason why you think our marriage would be evil? Because you believe I had your brothers killed?
But you did. You did.
Since your mother saw me yesterday, hasn't she said anything different about it?
No, she has not. Because she knows it was you. And we all know it.
It was the Duke of Buckingham.
Who did it for you? Uncle Dickon never spoke to him again after he knew he'd killed Edward and Richard. He lost his head, and very rightly too. And Uncle Dickon refused to have another word with him even before he went to the scaffold.
Wasn't that because he shared Buckingham's guilty conscience?
Never in this life. Uncle Dickon was as good and kind to Edward and Richard as he was to me.
Nothing would induce you to believe that he had any part in murder.
Never in this life.
Very well, then. What if I should agree with you? Then where do we find the culprit?
In yourself.
Why not in Buckingham alone? Because he had the most cause, Elizabeth.
How should he?
In having a better claim to the throne than I have. Buckingham was great-grandson in direct descent of the male line from Thomas of Woodstock, youngest son of Edward III. Well, certainly he'd a strong claim to succeed Richard when the Prince of Wales died. But not if your brothers were still alive.
I've not heard Buckingham talked of in that way before.
Oh, then listen to the truth now. Buckingham murdered your brothers for his own gain and no one else's.
But how would he gain, if that helped to make you king?
But that wasn't his purpose at all. He rebelled against Richard just before I was due to land in England. Now, if things had gone well for me and I'd succeeded then, what do you think Buckingham would have done? With his strong army, he'd have waited until Richard and I had fought. One of us would have been defeated, the other exhausted, and then Buckingham with his fresh force would have fallen on the tired victor and been certain of victory in his turn. Then he'd have disposed of young Warwick, and who would have been left to inherit the crown? Only Buckingham himself. Now, do you see it, Elizabeth? You do, don't you?
It confuses me. There seem to be so many who think they should be king.
Ah, yes, so many who think they should, and so few strong enough to take a crown and hold it.
There's been so much war over it. I remember nothing but war.
There'll be peace now. A long peace. Would you welcome that, Elizabeth?
When there's war, you can never be sure what will happen to you. One is always afraid and confused.
Mm-hmm. And nothing grows. Nothing flourishes or progresses.
But somewhere, someone is thinking how to take the crown from you.
Oh, no one is ever going to do that, except my own son, when I die.
You seem to know that very surely.
Crowns are for the strong, Elizabeth. Not for men who merely believe they've a right to be kings, but for those who can make kings of themselves and remain so until the day they die.
But that isn't right. One is meant to inherit a crown.
Oh, so they say in myths and fairy tales, but we're not living in the days of King Arthur.
I very much like those tales of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere.
There was also William of Normandy who really lived.
He was a conqueror.
So am I.
Are you?
Mm-hmm. Between the two of us, I'll admit it. I've won a crown on Bosworth Field, Elizabeth. A crown I mean to keep.
You said one must be strong.
Oh, yes, but I don't mean in arms.
Well, what else is there?
Wit and good judgment.
Uncle Dickon was a soldier. So was my father. They won a great many battles together.
And I don't believe a king needs to be a soldier, not if he's a better politician. And if he's a good politician, he'll have the best possible soldiers to fight his battles for him, because he'll know how to use powerful men to his own advantage.
Oh?
Oh, yes. And this is what I believe I can do. I hate war, but no one will find me a weak king because of that. A realm governed by a man who needs to use the sword is governed by a weak man. In Italy, their princes adore the art of statesmanship. I've heard there are no rulers more cunning at it. And what's the result? Prosperity, my dear. Trade, banking, wealth. Wealth is the greatest power next to the power of influence. And let me tell you how I know that. Through being poor myself. Oh, yes. For years, at the French king's court, threadbare I was, depending on royal charity for my dinner. Never again. Never again. The illusion that honor and dreams are worth more than cash. Being poor taught me how to look after money. I'm therefore incapable now of judging any act or policy without calculating whether it will show a profit. Do you hear that? Every decision I make as king will be made according to the profit I can see in it, and I'll be satisfied to get a reputation for that. Oh, but Elizabeth, it's time for someone to dismiss the age of violence in this country and put the age of politics in its place. To rule in power by political means alone. To be so sagacious in politics and statesmanship that the power of armed force becomes forgotten in the land. That's been my ambition and my purpose ever since they dangled the crown of England before my eyes, and I reached out to take it.
But what about your enemies?
Oh, which enemies?
Oh, the enemies every king always has. Even kings like my father and Uncle Dickon had enemies.
I'll see to mine in my own way.
What way?
I shall make it impossible for them to afford to be my enemies. Strike at them through their purses before they have a chance to strike at me with their swords.
And since you will have enemies, will you be just towards them? Will you be like my father and Uncle Dickon were towards their enemies, merciful and tolerant?
No, Elizabeth. I shall not be quite like your Uncle Dickon. Not so anxious to please, so trusting in human nature that I put my own human generosity before political caution.
Then you'll put it before justice, will you?
I shall be just, Elizabeth, because justice is one of the exquisite emblems of perfect statesmanship.
Then if you believe in justice, what will you do about my cousin Warwick?
Oh. Who told you to ask me that?
No one told me to ask you. I know he's in the Tower like my brothers were, and after them and Uncle Dickon, he should have been king.
Have you some idea, Elizabeth, why I put your cousin Warwick in the Tower? It's because I want peace. There's been enough misery caused by the wars between Lancaster and York. Now let us have peace, stable government, things you can't have when there's an excuse for insurrection. Young Warwick in Yorkist hands would provide that excuse.
Shall I be able to see him?
Oh, you shall be able to see him. Content yourself that he's happy. Because I promise you this. I consider him as innocent as your brothers were. His life is therefore my responsibility.
You say that as if you meant it from your heart.
I told you I'm not going to use violence as an instrument of power. Let Warwick stand for that vow of mine. The safety of his life, let's say, shall be my testimonial that I've the strength to rule by statecraft and not force. Now, does that please you?
Yes.
Good. I didn't expect to find myself concerned to have your good opinion so early on our meeting.
And I was afraid, knowing I must try to have yours.
On your mother's command, no doubt?
It didn't need my mother to tell me that if we must marry, it's best if there's courtesy between us.
Did you prefer it when your Uncle Dickon wanted to marry you?
Who did you say?
Richard, I said. He wanted to marry you, didn't he?
Marry me? But he was my own uncle.
And proposed marriage to you for reasons of state.
How could he? I don't know what you say.
But turned aside because of the outcry against incest. Wasn't that why he didn't force you to marry him?
No.
Then what was
no.
the reason? Only fear of God?
He didn't want to marry me. Uncle Dickon could never have such a wicked thought. Never in this life.
What if I tell you it would please me to hear you say that your Uncle Dickon wanted to marry you?
How could it please you to hear a foul and wicked lie?
Now forget all I just said.
I don't understand, Your Grace.
But I understand that you wouldn't traduce a man unless there was good reason for it. A loyal niece, Elizabeth, promises a loyal wife. Forget all I've just said. I'm content with you, and I'll make you a promise. You shall have as much pleasure out of being Queen of England as any beautiful young woman could wish for. Joy, laughter, and admiration. Will that be enough?
I think to know where I am for one day after another, that would be very comforting indeed.
Here I am to comfort you.
I remember there always being so much fighting and sorrow and danger. Do you say that's ended?
That kind of grief for you is ended.
I could believe all you say. I wish I were not afraid to believe it.
What are you afraid of?
My Uncle Dickon wanted peace and justice and mercy for his enemies. Are you wiser than he was? Are you stronger? And is your purpose finer than his?
Come on, Jack. Times were never like these. Drink up, lad, and let's be drowned in bloody lot.
I could fair drown myself, Tom. I could do that and all. Drown myself in ale and feel none the worse for it.
Tax collector would have thee wife after burial, that's all.
He's had the skin off my back. After there's nought else left except Bessie when I'm gone.
Aye, it were a bad change, weren't it, Jack? Our good Lord Richard for that skin-scraping, blood-sucking Welshman Henry Tudor.
Hush, Tom. He's the king, anyhow.
Yeah, king of my... 2 years now, Jack. 2 years, and naught to show for it, except Percy's worn smooth inside from sliding brass out for taxes.
Wait, lads, we'll be merry again. Who says we ever shall? While that sour-faced lickpenny sits ruling over us, screwing the brass out of us like a usual...
Have you not heard, then? King Edward VI landed from Ireland on the shores of Lancashire.
Ah, it's no more than rumour, though.
No, it's past being rumour now. The Earl of Warwick, lads, crowned king in Dublin. Our good Lord Richard's true successor, marching south with a great army of the Irish to turn that Lancastrian impostor right off his throne. It's true, then? Aye, it's true. The Earl of Lincoln to him, and other brave Yorkish lords. What do they say to that, then?
I'll tell you what I say. I fought for King Richard at Bosworth. I saw him die, cut down by bloody treason as he stood fighting alone. I remember his justice and friendship for us while he was Duke of Gloucester and Lord of the North. And I say, if it's King Richard's nephew who's coming to take his own from that Tudor bastard, then he'll lead us men of York to help him do it.
Aye, what about it then, Will? I'm with Jack. Just kept the eye in at butts lately.
Aye, that I have. And I'll bend my bow for Richard's nephew any day.
Stop up then, lads, and let's be off and fetch our gear. There'll be others from Yorkshire marching the same road in King Richard's name.
Aye, that they will. Here's to York, lads, and the White Rose for a summer of better days again.
To York.
To Richard and the White Rose.
But the boy's name is Simnel, merely Lambert Simnel. And how Lincoln could have persuaded so many to believe this gutter-snipe, this son of an Oxford baker, to be Edward, Earl of Warwick and Yorkist heir to the throne confounds me.
It was very cleverly done.
Cleverly done. By God, Uncle, they've had the little booby crowned Edward VI in Dublin. And how clever should I have been to disillusion the flocks of madmen who've taken up his cause? Didn't I have young Warwick himself, the real Warwick, paraded through the streets of London in the life, hail and sound? Could all those thousands who saw him have thought it was an effigy?
The trouble lies in the north, where they didn't see him and believe the rumours that he was a substitute.
And do we know the source of those rumours, of all this present trouble? Do we know it, or do we not?
I must say it's hard to understand the Queen Dowager's purpose.
Where is she, Uncle? Does she know I want to see her before I leave?
She's waiting now.
Oh, you keep her waiting, too. And much good will it do her to invent lies and excuses while she waits.
If there's one man who must be sure in his mind that the boy Simnel is an impostor, that man is the Earl of Lincoln himself.
Oh, I know who my real enemy is, Uncle. I know it's not the small pawn in a king's trappings, schooled perhaps with the manners of a choir boy. Oh, I know it's the man who leads his army for him. If I were playing Lincoln's game, I could do it just as well as he intends. Win the contest of arms first, then boot the little trumped-up figurehead back into the alleys where he came from, and proclaim myself king. By right of nomination as Richard's heir, and that's what Lincoln intends. I know it.
The contest at arms can't be avoided now.
As you say, Uncle, I've got to fight to hold my throne. The last thing I ever wanted, the last thing I ever thought. After 2 years, it's come to this. I wanted peace, Uncle. I worked for it. Since my dear Elizabeth bore our son, the need for peace is doubled again and again. We'll inherit peace with France, peace with the Scots, but what will he inherit in his own kingdom? What have I achieved after my 2 years of good intentions? Violence and insurrection. Oh, God, it makes my heart sick. They accuse me of avarice, and almost usually because of the taxes I impose, but all I demand is money, not blood and flesh and pain. The men who call on other men for that, disguising their foul intentions with splendid trappings and fine battle cries, aren't they the real tyrants, Uncle? Aren't they?
Don't lose heart, Harry. This battle will see the end of it. Simnel's imposture, we'll be remembering it as the last festering sore of the Yorkist pestilence in England.
But who's to make sure I do win the battle?
The Stanleys have promised you 5,000 men. With their force added to yours, you can't be beaten.
And what did the Stanleys promise Richard before Bosworth? I'm well aware that I can't hope to beat Lincoln without the Stanleys to support me, and they know it too. So what do you say, Uncle? Is Sir William content with his fortune at my hands? Does he consider the office of Lord Chamberlain sufficient reward for what he did for me at Bosworth? And Lord Stanley, does he think his honours match his services to me? Or could it be that both of them have calculated that there may be more profit for them if they turn to Lincoln now?
Lord Stanley is your mother's husband. It's monstrous to have any cause for doubting the loyalty of the Stanleys.
Ironic, Uncle. Ironic that after 2 years on the throne, exactly as long as Richard reigned, I find myself relying for my own survival on the Stanleys, just as Richard did. And if they found it so easy to betray one king at Bosworth, why shouldn't they find it just as easy to betray another king now?
Forgive me, Your Grace.
Why, Sir William? What is it you have to repent of?
Coming in on your privacy before time.
Is that all?
I did my best to entertain the Queen Dowager, sire, but she is in no mood for courteous conversation and keeps asking why she has to wait.
A dire penalty of your office, Sir William, to have to pacify the king's mother-in-law when she's impatient. Why didn't you suggest that she should go and play with her grandson until I was ready to see her?
Her Grace is in a difficult temper, complaining of insult and so forth.
Oh, I can imagine that. We'll both meet in a difficult temper.
May I tell her, sire, that you will see her very shortly?
I don't pretend that I want to see her at all. It's a painful matter, isn't it?
As your Grace says.
Well, you know as much as I do about it. What are your comments, Sir William?
I made my comments in council, sire.
Oh, yes, I remember you agreed that the Queen Dowager has been guilty of treason, but I've not heard your private thoughts about her extraordinary behavior.
I have no private thoughts, sire, that I don't make open to you in council.
You haven't? Well, then I'm wrong in thinking of you as a very secret man. Am I?
What secret does your Grace require me to make open to you now?
The secret of who'll have a victory, Sir William. Will it be the Earl of Lincoln with his rebels, or will it be us?
It can only be the stronger force. And I have no doubt which one that will be. There is no secret about it.
Take care, Sir William. Take care of your responsibility. It falls to your family to decide the fate of England for the second time. Make the decision with honor. The future won't judge you by any other motive.
The Stanleys, sire, don't ask to be judged by any other motive.
You can tell the Queen Dowager I'm ready to see her.
I will, your Grace.
Oh, if he's made a pact with Lincoln, I wouldn't envy Lincoln in the end.
Listen, Harry, it's only a kind of fever with you, this suspicion, because you know there's a battle ahead. I've heard men have very strange fancies before they go into battle. With some, it's an idea their wives have been unfaithful.
And with the king, it may be the idea that his most powerful supporters could be unfaithful.
Her Grace, the Queen Dowager, sire.
Am I really being granted the favor of His Majesty's attention at last?
In the circumstances, a very high favor, madam.
Why did you send for me like this? With no ceremony at all, Henry.
Because the only court qualified to judge a queen for high treason is the king himself.
What are you accusing me of now?
Support for the impostor Lambert Simnel.
What support?
Will it do to tell you about intercepted letters? That you've made it known to Simnel's supporters that you favor the masquerade, and you're willing to acknowledge this pathetic underling as the Earl of Warwick who should be on the throne in my place? Mother-in-law, I know it all, and I understand it less and less. You've seen the real Warwick for yourself. You could see him again and again, any time you needed the assurance that he was still in the tower. Well, here you are then. Mother of the Queen of England. Grandmother of the future king. You want more than that, do you? And what you want is worth the hazard of your life, your position, and all it holds for you? What you want is to take the risk that if you help Lincoln to the throne, he'll make a king who'll indulge you more than I've any intention of doing? Well, answer me, madam.
Don't demand like that, so loud.
Madam, I could demand your head very quietly.
I had 2 sons once. Do you think a mother can forget bearing 2 sons?
Is it to the point you still believe I caused the murder of your sons?
And you still deny it?
Uncle Jasper, will you please bear witness to my repeated denial on oath before God that I even knew those innocent lives were being sacrificed?
I will, Harry.
But it doesn't satisfy you, madam.
You've told me you know everything.
About the villainy of human ambition, I do. And I shall learn how to distinguish it from human vengeance.
One learns that lesson painfully.
Oh, yes. It's given me great pain to have to judge you. Your courage is madness, but it is courage.
Your judgment doesn't terrify me, Henry. Perhaps I died with all my purpose for this life when those two boys of mine were murdered.
You still have a daughter?
I'm hardly friends with my daughter.
Because she's no longer useful to you. Not as a grateful Earl of Lincoln might be useful. Oh, don't say you've no purpose for this life. Yours can never change, madam. Insatiable ambition is the right name for your madness.
What are you going to do?
If I offered you justice, do you know what it would mean? The block. I'd have to execute you for treason.
But you've decided to offer me mercy, have you?
Oh, not to you. To Elizabeth. I find I can't condemn my wife to a shame like that. I shall merely deprive you of your pension, your property, and privileges, and then you will go and reside in the convent of Bermondsey.
In a convent?
Well, surely the best place to think meek thoughts for a change. Meanwhile, there'll be no public mention of treason. Do you understand?
You put me in disgrace without giving a reason like any other tyrant.
Only because I love your daughter, and I'd spare her the humiliation of your treason. I'll give as reason that this is your punishment for coming to terms with Richard after you took sanctuary in Westminster.
That was 2 years ago. People will think your judgment has been too slow to be just.
I don't care what they think. Only that they shan't know the shameful truth about your treason, only for Elizabeth's sake.
No, Henry, you can't deceive me for your own sake. Put me on trial for treason, and the world would know what I really am. A mother whose sons were murdered, and whose real shame would be to forgive it.
Madam, I pity you. I see nothing can change your belief that I was responsible. It's become a sickness with you. I pity you for your sickness. Perhaps in Bermondsey you will find a little peace.
Have I your grace's leave to go now?
Madam, you have my leave. Oh, wait. If you wish to see your grandson, tell Sir William Stanley. They have my orders to admit you.
That's kind. But will you understand that you can't give me your child in exchange for my own?
God help me. How much more tolerant must I be?
Don't trouble yourself, Harry. You gave the witch a fair and good judgment.
Did I?
Yes.
If I send her to the scaffold, there are quite a few who say that was fair and good judgment, too.
Your intentions don't lead you that way.
Well, my intentions? So what are they worth now, after 2 years of hard trial?
At least the block on Tower Hill hasn't been used more than you intended.
And as a result, perhaps I find myself facing a rebellion that's going to cost more blood savagely spent than 1,000 executions at the Tower.
You've not failed yet, Henry.
Oh, no, not quite. Yet. There's still a small Tudor in his cot. The chief of my intentions, Uncle. That he'll inherit after me. Otherwise, what's it for? What is it for?
Henry,
Oh, Elizabeth.
are you very surprised to see me?
Very surprised, my sweet.
I came to ask you for your decision on a most important matter.
And what is it?
On the way, I've forgotten it.
Oh, very important. Hey, now look. Have you got a trail of ladies in attendance behind you?
None at all. We're not to be formal until we go to dine.
Then there's only Uncle Jasper to make a gossip of this kiss in public.
My dear soul. What have you been doing?
Deciding matters of state and human fate.
What have you decided?
To do what's best for your sake and the child. Why do you let me keep you from your beds any longer, gentlemen?
Because you're restless. You won't sleep, and none of us have a good reason for sleeping either.
Boy, pour me some more of that brew.
At once, my lord.
If the Stanleys knew they'd made us lose our sleep like this, they'd laugh.
It isn't easy to fit a laugh on Lord Stanley's face.
For the love of God, Oxford, why do you make silly remarks at this time of night?
Nearly dawn, sire.
Then why don't you go to bed? Forgive me, and don't leave me.
Whether the Stanleys come or not, we'll fight. We'll give an account of ourselves.
But we won't win.
By God, sire, we'll have those Irishmen and those German mercenaries of Lincoln days.
But without the Stanley contingent, we won't win.
Oh, they'll come. Must be on the march now.
Well, if they're on the march, why haven't they joined us before this? What's that?
A nightjar in the trees outside.
I keep thinking I can hear a cry of treason.
Treason?
I keep thinking I can hear it. The cry Richard gave as he fell at Bosworth. Treason. I heard it then, I can hear it now.
There'll be good news in the morning.
Oh, it'll have to be very good news, Uncle, to match the bad news of the moment, that some of our supporters here, we've already been defeated and they've turned back.
We'll fight. We'll stand up to those rebels.
Shall we, Oxford? Oh, I don't pretend to be a soldier, but even I'm aware that you don't expect victory from an army without discipline.
Nothing like danger to bring a fighting man to order and obedience.
You take me for a fool. You think I don't know that if my men continue to desert and fall behind as they do, we'll have nothing but a handful left by the time we make our stand against Lincoln?
Don't judge matters to be worse than they are, Harry.
Oh, how much worse could they be? I'm about to contest with Lincoln for my throne. There are other men who could have supported me besides the Stanleys. I notice too many standards absent from my camp. Meanwhile, we hear of men flocking to join Lincoln from all over the north. Uncle, it was you who told me that the dead have a power the living sometimes envy. Well, it seems that Richard still has more friends loyal to him in death than I can muster.
But this is a Yorkist rebellion, not a crusade in Richard's name.
And I'm as near disaster as Richard was before Bosworth.
More wine, your Grace.
Oh, go to bed, boy. Stop this wandering in and out and get to sleep.
If I've got your Grace...
Oh, yes. We can see to our own needs. Off with you. Oh. If I'm defeated, I think I shall know why.
Lack of men.
Lack of friends. In 2 years on the throne, I haven't made a real friend. After 2 years as king, I failed to win either the affection of my people or their loyalty.
Will you look at me and say that, sire?
Oh, Oxford. You didn't come to me with your friendship in those early days before Bosworth. It was your fortune you put into my hands. Because I was the only man you could bring it to after your father and your brother had lost their heads for being loyal to the House of Lancaster. And if defeat comes now, it's not foremost your friend and sovereign you stand to lose. It's your head.
By God, sire, I protest at the color you put on my loyalty to you.
You must forgive me, John de Vere, but there are moments when men are given grace to see the truth about themselves. I don't want to be a coward at this moment of mine. All human beings need affection, for one purpose or other. And kings need it as a condition for holding their thrones. Except for my wife and my own mother, I don't know where I can claim it. And they're women, you see. They say with women, love is akin to pity.
Go easy with yourself, Harry.
Why should I? I make excuses. Why should I? I'm not loved as Edward was, as Richard was. Very well. Because of that, I stand to lose everything. But if fate and the humor of the Stanleys show me a special favor, what do I learn? That to win affection, I have to be an indulgent fool, go against my best judgment, abolish foresight, deny good policy, no matter how appropriate conditions make it? I won't do it. I'm not a fool. I'm not indulgent. And I am a politician. If I survive, God help me, but neither fear nor gratitude will make me change from what I am, and what I still think I have to do as king.
I'm your own flesh and blood, Harry. Even if I didn't understand you, I should stick to you because of that. But I like courage and I like honesty. So even if I wasn't your uncle, this moment would make me your friend.
I'm a soldier because I've had to be. Ever since my family declared for Lancaster. But if fortune should go against you when we meet the rebels, sire, I'd wish you to know that John de Vere, Earl of Oxford, wouldn't begrudge his head to a man he respected.
John.
What for, sire?
Well, somehow I see a boar's head with truffles on a dish.
One would recognize it as Oxford immediately.
God, we're all in our caps. What's that, then? I thought everyone else was sober in their beds.
My lord, there's a messenger just ridden in.
What you got to say, then?
The army of Lord Stanley and Sir William Stanley was delayed, but they're camped within half a day's march and join you in Nottingham tomorrow.
That will do, Captain of the Guard.
Sir?
The Stanleys are with me. It means victory. And there's nothing to take back.
No. Nothing I said in contemplation of defeat that I don't mean now.
We'll help ourselves to the wine we need.
And there's no reason we shouldn't go on laughing at the jokes we make.
Oh, I've often heard those bells sound for rejoicing.
If they weren't ringing for my victory at Stoke, they'd be ringing as a welcome to King Edward VI. Or rather, King John II, which is what Lincoln would have titled himself, I've no doubt.
Is he dead for certain?
Oh, yes. Yes, he was killed in the battle. I saw him for myself. There's nothing left of him.
Then what are you going to do with the child?
Lambert Simnel? Well, what is the proper thing to do with the one who has cost me so much in life and effort and money?
But he's a little boy.
He agreed to be my opponent.
Well, a little boy doesn't know what he agrees to. He does as he's told.
But does he really?
Henry, the child is only 12 years old.
And what does that entitle him to claim? Immunity from the consequences of treason?
Oh, dear. I've seen him, and he seems to me only a little boy.
Then what do you think I should do with him?
You've always said you despise violence as an instrument of power.
Oh, I've always said that. But what about it as an instrument of vengeance to gain respect and fear? You see, my subjects will persist in trying to show me that a king can't rule without violence.
Could you perhaps put the child safe in the tower like Warwick himself?
Or treat him like a royal prisoner and have fools say he might be Warwick after all? Oh, certainly not.
Then what will you do?
I must dispose of him, and any legend that may still cling to him.
Oh, dear God. Dispose of him, Henry?
Yes. And you shall come and see me do it. Now, there's no need, Your Majesty, for one monarch to stand in the presence of another. Pray be seated. Oh, yes, but down there on the step, if you please. I'm afraid there's no room for both of us on the throne. Provide His Majesty with a cushion. Is that comfortable for your grace? Oh, come, sire. Here's a handkerchief. Wipe your nose with it. Is that better, huh? Now strive to look a little more royal. Otherwise we can scarcely imagine your grace as having been crowned King Edward VI in Dublin Cathedral. So perhaps you'd like to forget it yourself. Is it something you'd like to forget, boy?
I really would.
Yes. Well, as a rule, one forgets such things best when one's head is off. Oh, enough of that. It's hardly a kingly thing, Master Simnel, to squall when one is afraid. I've been very much afraid at times, boy. And I had to pretend I wasn't. Now, you see, I'm telling you the truth. So, we seem to have an abdication on our hands. Now, will you be King of England, or shall I? Well, as an answer, that scarcely satisfies me. Now, how would it suit you if, as an especial favor, I agreed to remain king? Well, that disposes of King Edward VI. So now we only have the problem of what to do with Lambert Simnel. Now, isn't that so? Have you a trade, lad? Apart from lending yourself out for coronation. An intelligent lad who's quick to learn deserves some occupation found for him that matches his station in life. Now look at me, Simnel. I'll do you an honor, boy. There's a place for you in the royal scullery. Will you take it and be grateful?
I'm not to have my head off, then?
To be executed as a rival for my throne, boy, is an honor you must really not aspire to. One has to be worth the axe, Master Simnel.
There, little boy. No more need to cry.
As the Queen says, no more need to cry. Leave that to the widows made by the battle at Stoke, where your adventure ended. And leave it to me when I begin to take account of what your imposture has cost me. Call the butler and have this boy taken away. Now let's have no ceremony about it. The performance is ended.
That was well judged, Harry. There goes the Yorkist's last hope and final attempt against you.
A final attempt, Uncle? Do you think it is?
Our cause might have survived the defeat at Stoke, but not the ridicule you've dealt it now.
Now I want peace. No more wearisome conspiracies, hatred and war. God give me time to work out my purpose for this country in peace, Uncle. And my son will be the envy of every Christian king for the strong land he rules and the strong throne he occupies.
His Majesty the King.
Be seated, my lords. So here we are. Instead of going to our prayers like Christians, we have to meet in urgent council to discuss a matter so detestable that I doubt if I shall keep my patience and be wise about it.
God will provide you with the patience, sire, and the rest of us with the wisdom, I pray, to give you good counsel at this grave time.
I trust so, my Lord Archbishop, I trust so. Then let's begin with this wretched business of Sir William Stanley. Lord Oxford, if you have the deposition there, please give us the gist of it again and how the case stands against him.
As the deposition states, sire, Sir William Stanley has said that if the fellow Perkin Warbeck is indeed the son of Edward IV, he will never fight against him. As a result, there's good reason to suspect that Sir William is already in contact with Warbeck and plans to support him with arms the moment he lands in England.
Does any man here hold even the smallest suspicion that the impostor Warbeck might really be Richard, Duke of York, as he claims, younger of Edward's two sons, supposed to have been murdered in the Tower?
It's impossible to doubt for an instant that Warbeck is anything more than your Majesty's careful investigations prove him to be.
The son of a Florentine Jew to whom King Edward stood no closer than as godfather.
I think, in fact, he stood closer than that. The likeness I've seen of Perkin Warbeck convinces me that he's one of Edward's bastards, the cleverest of them, perhaps, certainly the one who resembles him most.
That still fails to make him Duke of York.
Oh, yes. But it makes him only half an impostor and therefore twice as dangerous. Sir William is no fool and clearly perceives Yorkist royal blood in Warbeck. I have a contempt for fools that's made it easier for me to pardon certain traitors than to execute them, because I found most traitors to be fools. I only wish to God I could say that of Sir William.
Why has he done this? Why?
Why? Because Sir William Stanley is dissatisfied. Disillusioned with me, perhaps. Maybe that makes him a bigger fool than he is a traitor. Perhaps I can avoid having to judge him wholly as a traitor, Well, what do you say, my lords? Could I at least leave him his head to repent with?
That's not the advice any of us could give you, sire.
No, Morton. I thought not. I must execute him, must I?
Without any hesitation.
And the Queen Dowager, would that be your advice in her case, too?
It ought to be. This is the second time that madwoman has reported an impostor against you.
But this time because she believes Warbeck might really be her youngest son, that Richard lied to her when he told her both of them were dead 10 years ago. Isn't that what she says?
She can't believe it.
What?
She can't believe her sons aren't dead.
Why?
Because they were murdered before Bosworth.
Who can prove it, eh?
You can prove it, sire.
How?
By pronouncement.
Pronouncement of what?
That Richard murdered them.
And that's why Perkin Warbeck can't possibly be the Duke of York.
Of course it is.
Ah, then where are the remains of the Duke of York? If I could have proved those princes dead, isn't it true there'd be no Perkin Warbeck?
Probably so, but...
If the Queen Dowager believes Warbeck could really be her son, why shouldn't I believe it too,
Because it's impossible,
Why
sire.
is it impossible?
Because we know they were murdered, and who murdered them?
Do we indeed know anything more than we've been told by one another? Do we? Such confusion, isn't it? For 8 years now, violence, treachery, and confusion. Until I think I might look for a simple way to clear these matters up for good. For instance, if I must execute Sir William Stanley, Why not have a holocaust while we're about it,
What does your majesty mean?
It's 8 years now since Bosworth, and I've been at grips with the same enemy ever since. Fought him through those early rebellions in the north, then through Simnel, and now through Warbeck. And that's not all, though. I've sometimes won a truce. When I fought him through Elizabeth, my wife, as the kind and benevolent Uncle Dickon, that's when I won a truce. And the Queen Dowager, she was his legacy to me. His greatest enemy. He bequeathed that to me as well. The man we set out to have discredited and damned throughout the land for his monstrosities, because that was a clever way to weaken and destroy his influence. He's with us still. Stronger in lordship now he's dead than ever he was alive. By God, I was ready to honor him in my heart, even while I agreed to try and destroy his name. But I hate him now.
For being the usurper and homicide he was.
Oh, no, Oxford, we only hate the men we really fear. I haven't feared Richard until I knew he might be my corruption, instead of I being his ruin.
What's this?
I was once a man who believed in the strength of statesmanship and political ingenuity above the use of force. I now find myself in doubt of that.
Taking heads on mere suspicion is a recognized way of saving trouble.
Yes, I'm almost at the point of believing it. That the only proof of strength one's enemies recognize is the use of violence. Imprisonment. Torture. And the block. The fool. Is that what they want to make of me? Homicide. Very well. Let me sign that order for Sir William Stanley's execution. Damn that noise! Can't someone drown the fellow who's making it?
If you didn't have logs for your fire, Henry, you'd complain just as much.
I complain that we can hear so many disturbing sounds in our daily lives.
Never mind.
How intricate your work is.
Do you like it?
It reminds me of something.
Of what?
Of politics.
My tapestry reminds you of politics.
So many different colored threads, such a complex pattern woven. It's beautiful and intriguing.
Now my eyes are tired. It's become too dark.
I sent for candles.
No. I'll wait for daylight tomorrow.
Shall we have music? Would you like me to send for Risa Boyce?
Oh. You've a new favorite now, have you?
Oh, well, any good Welsh bard is my favorite. There's no more glorious sound than noble Welsh poetry nobly sung to a singing Welsh harp, now is there? But you enjoy the tumblers and the gay dancers best, don't you, my love?
And you like them too, Henry. I've seen you give an acrobat 5 shillings for turning twice over in the air. 5 shillings! Oh, God have mercy.
Well, they may call me mean and avaricious, and I know they do, but I can pay like a king for simple things that please me, for books and music and paintings. Well, I'd rather pay 5 shillings to a man who can turn 2 somersaults in the air than the wages of a bowman for 1 day.
So you would, dear soul. So you would.
And take scholarship, too. Well, you know what I think of scholars. You won't find a worthy scholar in my kingdom who can't get a pension for the asking. An encouragement. And a chance to flourish.
Oh, yes. Your scholars who talk like angels. So very wise and learned. It defeats a silly mortal like me to understand half of what they say.
And there again, I'd rather be surrounded by a bodyguard of scholars than those giant yeomen of mine. Scholars cost far less to feed. But they force me to sound drums instead of harps. And I have to take myself everywhere with a band of armed men to guard my life.
It's over now, Henry. It's over, isn't it?
What's over?
The rebellion that gave you so much torment and anxiety for these past 6 years. Perkin Warbeck's in the tower now.
Oh, yes, he's in the tower. Another impostor's failed to shift me. I've got a son, and a throne for him to inherit. But through it all, I wonder if I've kept my innocence.
You? What? speak like that before.
My innocence stands for more things than chastity, you know.
Stands for what, then?
Perhaps you can sometimes call it vanity. The sort a man has in abhorring certain things, or rejecting certain measures, because his vanity convinces him he's got the strength to do better otherwise. Well, the Queen and I were not to be disturbed. Go away. Well, the devil can find you. Come in and say what it is.
Will His Majesty receive the Earl of Pembroke and His Grace the Archbishop of Canterbury?
I'll go.
Let them come in.
The instruction's urgent, Harry.
What have you got to tell me?
Bad news, sire.
Oh, well, has Warbeck escaped from the tower?
Trouble almost as bad.
We've heard rumors, Harry, of another Fane boy.
This one claims to be the Earl of Warwick again.
You mean it?
Why, you can trust your agents, Harry, not to invent calamities. We have the details in documents.
I don't want to look at them. I know this squalid tale by heart. Who is he this time?
The usual nobody, of course. Named Rafe Willard, I believe.
The swords haven't been drawn yet, at least. This time we found out the conspiracy before it's too late. There'll be no violence.
Morton, you must have some advice for me.
No advice your Majesty can't already have foreseen.
You say I should know what to do.
I have no doubt of it, sire.
Now, what is the one thing I can do to avert another insurrection?
Unless you do it, sire, this situation will repeat itself again and again. Here we are with another impostor claiming to be Warwick. It need not be the last of them. You must take decisive action this time, sire. The only step that can end the danger of further impostors arising to threaten your reign and menace the succession.
Say what I have to do.
This is a moment when your Majesty surely doesn't need my advice.
Why are you afraid to tell me that I've got to execute the Earl of Warwick?
Not merely Warwick.
Warbeck as well, you mean?
We can't have it, sire. We cannot have it. So long as it's known an Earl of Warwick exists, there'll be reckless men plotting to put someone up to impersonate him. Not until there isn't a Warwick. Until his head on Tower Hill assures the population that there was and now is not an Earl of Warwick, will there be any safety in the realm.
A perfectly reasonable argument, Morton, but why Warbeck as well?
Because the time has come to show your strength. Not your mercy, but your strength.
Oh, my strength, oh, yes, indeed. And I refuse to execute Warbeck because I saw it so plainly as an act of mere vengeance on a beaten enemy. Vengeance. The feeble resort of a weak man. Violence. The lowest form of vengeance.
If it's any comfort to your Majesty, let me remind you, sire, that some virtues which might be honorable in ordinary men aren't practical with kings. And God understands that.
Morton, in all the time you've been my chief and cleverest advisor, your advice may not always have pleased God or my conscience, but the fact that I'm still king proves it to have been intensely practical.
I know how you feel, Harry. But consider your son now. That's all I can say. Act on this for his sake.
So that he won't have to do these things for his own sake.
You must make an order for the executions very soon.
On what grounds?
Grounds?
There surely must be some pretense of justice.
Execution is the usual penalty for treason.
What treason can Warwick possibly have committed shut in the tower for 14 years?
Warbeck's in the tower, too. He might have conspired with his fellow prisoner to seize the tower and cause an insurrection. He can invent the details later.
Oh, invent the details, oh yes. All these years we've tried to attribute every conceivable outrage to Richard to persuade the people they're glad to be rid of him. And now I'm asked to consent to a deed that's worthy of this monstrous image of Richard that we've made such an effort and failed as yet to create.
The only part you need take, sire, in this most unhappy expedient is to put your signature and seal on a piece of paper.
I hardly think it is.
Harry, there's really no more to it than that.
My dear uncle, I wish your loyalty to me didn't encourage my complete corruption.
What do you mean, Harry?
Now listen. I'm a man of few illusions. But one illusion I brought with me to the throne 14 years ago. The illusion that I'd be able to reign and secure my crown through the virtues of statesmanship and practical good sense alone. It was an illusion, uncle, which somehow contained the best of my honor and my pride as a man. Not merely as a king, but as a man. Uncle, is that important, or isn't it?
Yes, Harry. It's important.
Now, there's nothing left of my illusions now. Nothing being only a king, except perhaps a faint knowledge that I'm still responsible for what I do as a man.
What is it you want to do?
Face my responsibilities, I think. Not refuse by merely putting my signature and seal on a piece of paper. To acknowledge what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
You're going to see Warwick?
Oh, I must do that.
No one could ask you to give yourself the pain.
No one has asked me to do it, Uncle.
If that's your Grace's decision, I think it should be carried out without undue delay.
I agree, Morton. The sooner it's done with, the better. No, leave him at his supper. If I must be late for mine, it's no reason to interrupt his.
As you please, Your Majesty.
Uncle, will you wait here for me?
But do you think you should?
I don't expect much hazard from Warwick at his supper. I want to see him alone. Open the door, if you please.
Come in, fellow. Don't be ceremonious.
Do you know who I am?
Ah, who did they say you were?
I'll tell you myself, the king.
What king? We're all kings here.
Oh, I've heard that again they play in the tower. I'll excuse you the ceremony, Warwick. You've probably been here too long to remember good manners. Sit down and pour me some wine.
What have you done with Thomas?
Now, who's the one you call Thomas?
I want Thomas. I say fetch him
What for?
to play cards. Why isn't Thomas here instead of you? I saw a face in the corner over there last night. It wasn't Thomas then either. Where is he?
Sit.
I'm not a dog. Don't talk to me as if I were a dog. Why do you?
Just now I asked if you knew who I was. Do you know?
I only answer questions when I want to. 2 things I do when I want to. Only 2 things here. Go to the privy and answer questions.
You know who you are?
It's a secret. No one knows. Only me and Thomas.
How long has it been since you didn't even know who you were?
We hide from each other, Thomas and me. In the dark places. Deep and dark where no one knows.
God forgive me.
Have some wine, fellow.
Will you drink to the king if I do?
The king? What does it matter? We're all kings here. Thomas, too.
Perkin Warbeck.
Who?
Perkin Warbeck is a friend of yours.
Does he play cards?
Haven't you played with him?
Never heard the fellow's name.
I believe you.
Oh, stay and talk a little. Oh, don't go. Please don't go. Stay and keep me company.
I'll send Thomas to do that. He's crazed, Morton. Warwick's not right in his mind.
So they say, Your Grace.
I've seen it for myself. He's crazed. And the cause of it is 14 years alone in the tower. 14 years of utter innocence. The one man who's had no chance to be evil, no temptations, no inducement to corruption, and now he's mad. And I must kill him.
Don't think of it like that.
I've looked him in the face. Talk to him. Listen to his crazed chattering. He doesn't even know who Perkin Warbeck is, and I must sign the order for his death on the grounds of conspiracy.
Henry, what have you been saying? Is it about Cousin Warwick?
Yes. About your cousin Warwick.
What has he done?
He's committed high treason.
God have mercy on him. What treason?
He's conspired with Perkin Warbeck to seize the tower and cause an insurrection against me. Fortunately, we've discovered the plot in good time.
Wicked. Wicked. Will you have to punish him?
Oh, yes. And this time I have to show my strength and give traitors the justice they deserve. I must do it for our son's sake, Elizabeth, so that he'll have a crown to inherit. Do you understand that?
Yes, Henry. I understand. help that understand these things?
Well. Dear uncle and my lord Archbishop, you'll stay to dine at court, Well, of course you will. And we shall have music. We'll have the bard. We'll carry our souls away to Wales, uncle? And what about having the fools, too, huh? Ah, yes. We'll send for the fools. Come along, then. Into dinner with us. Call for my fools there. Send for the fools. Send for the king's fools.
In A Crown for the Strong by Lydia Ragosin, Henry VII was played by Haydn Jones, Princess Elizabeth by Mary Miller, and the Queen Dowager by Grizelda Hervey. The rest of the cast was as follows: Jasper Tudor, Ralph Truman; Oxford, Donald McKillop; Sir William Stanley, Dennis Hawthorne; Lord Stanley, Malcolm Hayes; Morton, John Ruddock; Warwick, David Valour; and Lambert Simnel, Carlo Cura. Other parts were played by members of the BBC Drama Repertory Company, and the play, which was recorded, was produced by Charles LeFeauX.